Have you ever caught yourself criticizing exactly what, in silence, you've always desired? Maybe a simpler and freer life. Maybe a true love. Maybe inner peace. Or perhaps prosperity, abundance, and recognition. It's curious how often we reject with words the very thing the heart keeps calling for. It's as if we were standing before a banquet, starving, but chose to laugh at the food instead of sitting at the table. We laugh to disguise the longing. We judge to hide the emptiness. We criticize to avoid revealing our fragility. Today, I want to invite you to reflect with me on this human paradox. How the criticisms we make, of ourselves, of life, and even of what we admire in others, can steal from us the chance to live our own truth. Because, deep down, what you criticize may be exactly what your soul longs to experience. And what if criticism weren't just an opinion? What if it were fear? What if, behind every judgment, there was a closed door to your spiritual awakening? Think about it. Every criticism may be a hidden key. A key that opens the door to what you're afraid to admit, but deeply wish to live. Criticism may sound like conviction, but it almost always hides fragility. We criticize the neighbor who travels because, secretly, we wish for the same freedom. We criticize those who live simply because we're afraid of letting go of excesses that no longer nourish us. We criticize those who dive into spirituality because we don't know how to handle the silence that would reveal uncomfortable truths. Criticism, in this sense, is like a wall. It seems to protect, but it imprisons. And every wall comes at a cost. It blocks the view of the horizon. The soul psychologist, the American James Hillman, reminded us that what we reject in others is often a reflection of what we have yet to recognize in ourselves. Criticism, therefore, is often the disguised call of the soul. The discomfort we feel in the face of someone else's freedom may just be the nostalgia for our own forgotten freedom. But why do we deny what we desire? Because allowing takes courage. Allowing yourself to be happy is accepting the risk of judgment, of others and, most of all, of yourself. That's why we hide behind criticism. It feels safer than surrender. But there's a price. When all we do is criticize, we grow rigid. We lose the lightness of the river that continues its course without stopping at each stone. The river doesn't waste energy judging obstacles. It simply passes, curves, and flows on. If the river stopped to judge every stone, it would never reach the sea. And us. How many times have we failed to flow because we insisted on judging? The South Korean philosopher Byung-Chul Han speaks of the society of fatigue. We live exhausted from ourselves, trying to match images of perfection that cannot hold. In this scenario, criticizing others becomes a way to relieve our own sense of inadequacy. But what if, instead of discharge, criticism were an invitation? An invitation to look within, to notice dormant desires, to listen to what we have not yet dared to live. Perhaps every criticism hides an unspoken confession. I wanted that too, but I don't have the courage. In the field of personal development, it's not criticism that defines who we are, but what we choose to allow. Allowing is opening inner space. It's recognizing that fear exists, but doesn't need to have the final word. Allowing is also an act of spirituality. The German mystic of the 13th century, Meister Eckhart, once said, "God is not found in the things we reject, but in the things we finally accept." To accept does not mean to resign. To accept is to allow yourself to be whole. Imagine life as a mirror. Everything you criticize reflects, in some way, a hidden part of yourself. Criticizing others is often not being able to bear your own reflection. But what if every criticism were, in fact, an invitation to self-knowledge? The next time you feel the urge to criticize, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what does this criticism reveal about what I desire for myself? You might discover it's not rejection at all, but a silent request from your soul. The French philosopher Simone Weil once said, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." What if we applied that to our criticisms? What if each judgment were transformed into attention? Attention to what is missing, to what we want, to what we haven't yet had the courage to live. Criticism, when turned into attention, ceases to be a stone and becomes a seed. And the seed, in darkness, quietly blooms. The Portuguese poet Fernando Pessoa wrote, "Everything is worthwhile if the soul is not small. Small is the soul that only criticizes. Great is the soul that allows. Allowing is not arrogance. It is humility before the call of life. Allowing yourself to love. Allowing yourself to prosper. Allowing yourself to rest. Allowing yourself to live in silence. Allowing yourself to make mistakes. Criticism paralyzes. Permission opens the way." See how this happens in small situations. You criticize someone who posts words of gratitude every day, but deep down you miss cultivating your own gratitude. You criticize those who talk about prosperity, but secretly you wish for abundance. You criticize those who seek spirituality, but you hunger for presence and inner silence. How many times, without realizing, have you used criticism to hide your desire for inner transformation? The American writer Henry David Thoreau, in recounting his experience of living in isolation at Walden, wrote, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. Constant criticism is often that desperation disguised. But when we allow ourselves, even in small gestures, we break the cycle of despair and touch spiritual awakening." And here lies an important reminder. True spirituality, the one that does not live on dogma or ready-made phrases, does not ask you to criticize less out of obligation, but to listen more. Listening to criticism as a signal is transforming resistance into an inner path. Throughout life, how many opportunities have been lost because judgment spoke louder than desire? How many dreams have been locked away in a drawer because criticism, yours or others, shouted louder than courage? Think of the people you admire. Maybe artists, thinkers, scientists, spiritual teachers. All of them, at some point, were criticized. Some even ridiculed. But if they had given in to criticism, they would never have allowed their light to come into the world. What are you leaving unlived out of fear of criticism? What version of yourself is hidden because you insist on judging before even trying? Now, close your eyes. Picture yourself standing before a mirror. But not the mirror of judgment, the mirror of the soul. In this reflection, there are no flaws, only possibilities. Everything you have ever criticized appears before you, not as condemnation, but as invitation. Ask yourself in silence, what within me is asking for permission to exist? What within me is tired of being denied? What does my soul long to bring to life, but I keep criticizing? Take a deep breath. Feel that every criticism can transform into a bridge, and as you cross it, you meet yourself. If something inside you has awakened while listening to these words, allow yourself to continue. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to walk with us on this fertile road of silence, discoveries, and reconnection. Leave your experience in the comments. Your sharing might be the seed of healing someone else was waiting for. And to keep expanding this field of presence, we suggest the video in the card. May it be a gentle breeze in your journey. Peace and light.